to this session on filing radius and profile to suit gauge. Let us begin with the session.
Let us look at the objectives of this session. At the end of this session, you will be able to file and mark as per job drawing, part off metal by chain drilling, file internal and external radius, check the radius using radius gauge. Let us look at the tools required for the procedure. Steel rule, bench vise, tri-square, files of different grades and sizes, dot punch and center punch, ball peen hammer, anvil, surface table, angle plate, vernier height gauge, drills of various sizes, drilling machine, chuck key, small flat chisel, hacksaw blade with frame, radius gauge, vernier caliper, lubricating oil. Let us now learn to file radius and profile to suit gauge. Check the size of the raw material using steel rule. File all the faces using bastard file. Ensure parallelism and perpendicularity using a tri-square. Apply marking media on face A. Mark to size of 60 mm by 40 mm using vernier height gauge. Witness mark the marked lines on workpiece using dot punch and ball peen hammer on an anvil. File and finish to the respective sizes using various grades of files. Ensure parallelism and perpendicularity using tri-square. Check the dimensions using vernier caliper. Again, apply marking media on face A. Clean the surface table and angle plate. Ensure that all the moving components of the vernier height gauge are functional. Support the job with the help of an angle plate on the surface table. Mark parallel lines at 5 mm, 10 mm, 12 mm, 30 mm and 35 mm from face B using a vernier height gauge. Mark parallel lines at 5 mm, 10 mm, 12 mm, 48 mm, 50 mm and 55 mm from face C using a vernier height gauge. Witness mark all the arc centers using a center punch and ball peen hammer on an anvil. Set the divider to 5 mm using a steel rule. Draw 5 mm radius arcs at given locations as per the drawing using the divider. Witness mark the entire profile using dot punch and ball peen hammer on an anvil. Fix the workpiece on the drilling machine vise. Fix 4 mm diameter drill bit on the drill chuck using the chuck key. Ensure the alignment of the drill with witness marked hole centers. Ensure the flow of coolant over the workpiece. Drill 2 holes of 4 mm diameter to form the internal arcs of radius 2 mm. Let us now learn to do the parting off operation by chain drilling. The shape of certain job features is such that the metals are to be cut in places which are inaccessible for hacksawing by hand. The most common method adopted in such cases is to chain drill and hacksaw the other sides. After chain drilling and hacksawing the other sides, a chisel is used along with a hammer to part off the metal. A web chisel or a small flat chisel is used for this purpose. Flat chisels. These chisels are used to remove metal from large flat surfaces and chip off excess metal of welded joints and castings. Web chisels or punching chisels. These chisels are used for parting off metals after chain drilling. If the workpiece is thicker, cutting needs to be done from both the sides using the chisel. Fix a drill bit of 4 mm on the chuck using the chuck key. Chain drill holes for parting off excess material. Remove the workpiece from the drilling machine vise. Fix the workpiece on a bench vise. Hacksaw along the inner edges of the workpiece. Place the workpiece on an anvil. Chip off the excess metal using a web chisel or a small flat chisel along with a hammer. File the internal slot to obtain the required internal profile. Hacksaw on the outer edge on the witness marked profile. File and finish the sawed portion and the external radius to obtain the required profile of the workpiece. Let us now learn to file the external radius. In this type of filing, the file must be held perfectly horizontal widthwise and at the same time a rocking motion given lengthwise. Radius filing of external surfaces is carried out in 3 steps, namely rough filing of corners, rounding of corners, final finishing of radius. Rough filing of corners. The corners are filed and brought closely to a line using a bastard file. Rounding of corners. A second cut file is used to round the flat surfaces and bring it to about finishing size. Check the radius frequently with a radius gauge. Final finishing of radius. A smooth file is used to finish the radius filing. The file is given a seesaw motion along the curved line until the required radius is formed. Let us now learn to check the radius using a radius gauge. Clean the radius gauge. Remove the burrs from the workpiece. Hold the radius gauge perpendicular to the radius to be checked. Move the gauge along the filed length of the radius for checking. Observe the contact surfaces for any light passing through. Check against the background of light. The right radius matches correctly with the gauge. After using the radius gauges, wipe them clean with a clean cloth and apply a light film of oil before storing. Let us now learn about the do's and don't. While chain drilling, ensure 1 mm space between drilling holes and witness marks. Chisel cutting will produce sharp edges. Handle the workpiece carefully. While filing external radius, frequently check with a radius gauge. Do not apply excessive pressure while filing radius, as the file is likely to slip. About 1 mm thick web is convenient for drilling and separating with a chisel. Check the external radius R5 with a radius gauge. Check the internal radius R2 with the radius gauge. Check the dimensions using a vernier caliper. Deburr and finish the workpiece using a small flat file. Apply a thin coat of oil and preserve for evaluation.
To recap, we have learned to file and mark as per job drawing, part of metal by chain drilling, file internal and external radius, check the radius using radius gauge. So that's all about filing radius and profile to suit gauge. Hope you have understood all the concepts and exercises. See you in the next session.